This happened to me one year on July, when I was 19 years old. It was my first job working security at a large public event, a popular annual event that takes place in the city where I grew up. Every year there's a huge fireworks show at the end of it. It's a 20-minute drive from where I live to where the event is held. So I figured I'd leave early, get some good food, check out the event, and maybe catch the beginning of the fireworks. So I get there around 6 p.m., which is when they start setting off the smaller fireworks for the kids. The event itself is pretty uneventful. I'm standing by the entrance, checking IDs and wristbands and letting people in. At this point, there's maybe 20 or 30,000 people in attendance. At around 8 p.m., my shift ends and I go to find my friends who work the first aid tent. I figure I'll hang out with them for a bit before the fireworks start. We walk over to the first aid tent, and there is literally thousands of people lined up to get in. My friends tell me they've been non-stop busy since the start of the event. There's been a lot of injuries from the rides and a lot of drunk people getting hurt. They tell me to just go check out the fireworks and come back and help them after. I walk back to the entrance to watch the fireworks, and the whole area is now packed. I can barely move. At this point, there must be close to 100,000 people here. I decide to walk further down the path to get a better view. Maybe if I can get past the Ferris wheel, I'll have a clear shot of the fireworks. As I'm walking, I see a family of 4 walking towards me. A man, a woman, and 2 young kids holding hands. The little girl must be 4 or 5 years old, and the little boy is maybe 2 or 3. I think to myself, perfect. I'll be able to get a good spot. Because these 2 little kids are gone, want to stop and watch the fireworks up close? As they pass by me, I say, hey, you guys want to get closer and see the fireworks better? The parents look at me and then at each other and say, yeah, okay. And we all head towards the fireworks set-off point, which is maybe 300 yards away at this point. We're now walking on a narrow dirt road with tall grass on either side. There are several houses along this road, but none of them have any lights on and no one comes out to watch the fireworks. It's weird. We walk past one house, and the girl looks up at the fireworks and says, wow, they're so close. Then she asks her parents, can we go inside and see them up close? And the dad says, no. It's too dangerous. You could get hurt. She starts crying, and then the mom scoops her up and walks her the rest of the way to the set-off point. We're now less than 50 yards from where the fireworks are being launched from. The little boy is now looking around and he sees a big firework and yells, whoa, let's go see it up close. He runs off the path and into the tall grass. His mom immediately drops the little girl and runs after him. The dad looks at me and screams, do something, please. He almost touched one. I don't know what to do. Should I go after him? Is it safe for me to go into that field? I can hear the mom yelling for him to come back as she disappears into the grass. I look at the girl and ask her, where's your brother? She looks at me and says, he went to see the pretty light, and mommy went after him. Then she started crying. I don't know what to do. Do I go after them? I can hear the dad screaming and yelling for help. Then it hits me. This is why there's no one outside. These fireworks are not the small, beautiful fireworks they were earlier. These are big, dangerous fireworks that are meant to be launched from a safe distance away. What have I gotten myself into? I run as fast as I can to the main road. I have to get to my car. I have to get away from here. As I'm running, I can hear what sounds like a shotgun blast, followed by screams and then silence. I make it to my car and slam the door shut. I lock it, and I put the car in drive. I have to get out of here. As I'm backing out of my parking spot, I see the silhouette of a man running towards my car. I roll down my window, and he out of breath, and he asking if I saw anything. I tell him I didn't, and I drive off. The next day I read in the newspaper that 2 children were killed and several others injured when a firework malfunctioned and exploded early. The parents were okay but suffered 3rd-degree burns. The news article said that the firework was meant to be launched from a 300-foot-high tower, but it was instead launched from a 10-foot-high mortar. To this day, I have never been back to that event, and I still have nightmares about those 2 kids running after the fireworks. It is probably no surprise that one of my absolute worst nightmares is being chased by an unrelenting killer. But did you know that fireworks are actually one of the main things that trigger my pyrotechnic phobia? Explosions, bright flashing lights, lots of smoke. All things that can go very wrong and have in fact gone very wrong throughout history. But you'd think that with modern technology and safety protocols, we could avoid the worst of these disasters, right? Well, unfortunately, this isn't always the case, as one Russian man found out the hard way. His name was Dmitry, and he was a fireworks technician working for a company hired to put on a show at a local fairground. The pay wasn't great, but it was enough for Dmitry to scrape by, so he didn't really mind. That was until the day of the show when he noticed something strange was going on with his equipment. One of the fireworks mortar was misfiring. Basically, instead of shooting the fireworks into the air, the mortar was just blowing up on the ground. Obviously, this was dangerous. So Dmitry decided to investigate. He opened the mortar in question to find a dead bird inside, presumably having flown directly into the fireworks and been incinerated. Somehow the bird's body had lodged itself into the mechanism in such a way that when the firework was shot, it exploded prematurely. Dmitry figured that whoever loaded the mortar must have missed this when they inspected it. So he told his supervisor, Yuri, what happened. But Yuri just laughed it off, saying that there was no way that a bird could get inside the mortar. And besides, he said, there were too many other things that could cause the misfire. They couldn't possibly check each and every one of them. So Yuri just took the bird out, taped the hole shut with some duct tape, and sent the mortar back down the line to be shot. This should have been the end of it, but as fate would have it, the very same mortar ended up in the hands of a child. It was supposed to be one of those grab-a-duck games, where the kids got 3 throws for $15, and the prize was a teddy bear. But this kid was determined to win this thing. So after feeding the machine several quarters, the child won the throw, and was handed the mortar by a game attendant who had no idea what was inside. The child ran off to find somewhere to examine his prize, and unsuspecting passersby were given a front row seat to what was about to happen next. As one man recalled, it was just like in the cartoons, only much more horrifying. The first explosion was so loud that people thought that someone had detonated a car bomb. Shrapnel rained down from the sky, tearing through the night sky. People fell victim to the blast wave, collapsing to the ground with bloody noses and torn ears. Glass shattered. People screamed as they tried to make sense of what had happened. When the dust eventually settled, 3 people were confirmed dead, including the child who had won the game and 2 other children who were playing nearby. Several more were injured with shrapnel wounds, concussions, and broken bones. In the aftermath, it turned out that the game attendant had actually meant to hand the child a water gun, not a deadly explosive device. As for the perpetrator behind all of this carnage, Yuri, well, he was busy covering his tracks. He tried to bribe the police, claiming that he didn't have anything to do with the mortar or the bird, but they weren't buying it. And as it turned out, neither was Dmitri. He came forward with his story about the misfiring fireworks, and Yuri was arrested. At his trial, Yuri claimed that he only taped the hole shut after Dmitri told him about the bird. He insisted that he had no idea that a bird had gotten in there in the first place. But Dmitri knew that Yuri was lying. He also knew that the police weren't going to believe him unless he could prove it, so he did what any reasonable person would do. He went home and got Yuri's personnel file from his time in the military. As it turned out, Yuri had a history of cutting corners and mishaps involving explosives, which proved to the police that Yuri was more than likely responsible for the accident. So Yuri was sentenced to 8 years in prison for manslaughter, and Dmitri was finally able to move on with his life. Now, if you want to hear another spooky tale about a close call with death, then be sure to check out this video next. But be careful. You never know where you might find a deadly explosion. I'm going to tell you a horror story about fireworks. I grew up in a small town, and every year we would have a 4th of July celebration. It was always pretty much the same. A parade with antique cars, a softball game between the local cops and firefighters, and then the annual pie auction where the local 4-H kids would raise money for the next year's projects by baking pies and then auctioning them off to the highest bidders. After that, there was a big feast of hamburgers and hot dogs, and then, of course, the fireworks. The fireworks were always set off from a barge in the middle of the lake in town. This one year, though, something went terribly wrong. It was the kind of summer day where even the bugs seemed to be out celebrating. The softball game was going into extra innings, so the fireworks were delayed until after it was over. And when it was, everyone headed down to the lakefront to watch the show. We had good seats on a little hill overlooking the entire display. My 2 kids were with us, my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old. My son was mesmerized by the booming cannons that were set off to signal the start of the fireworks. My daughter, being a little more timid, hid her face behind me. I felt a little bad for her because she really wanted to see the fireworks, but I told her it would be okay and that I would protect her. I stood up on my tiptoes to get a better view, and when I saw something horrifying. One of the fireworks had landed prematurely in the dry grass at the edge of the hill. It was smoking and sputtering, having failed to ignite properly. There was a family just a few feet away from it, and they didn't seem to notice. My heart stopped as I watched one of the kids from that family run towards the unexploded fire. I don't remember what I said to my wife, but I'm sure it was something like, "Get the kids out of here." My wife scooped up our 2 kids and ran as fast as she could away from the danger of the fireworks. As she reached my parents, who were sitting a safe distance away, I took off my shirt, tied it across my face like a bandage, figuring that if the firework exploded, at least it wouldn't burn my face. Then I started running towards the family whose kid had wandered too close to the fireworks. When I got close enough, I could hear the kid talking. He was trying to light the firework with a normal lighter, not knowing that it was already lit and smoldering below. I don't know how long I stood there watching him. I was debating whether I should tackle the kid or try to convince him to drop the firework. But before I could do anything, the firework blew up. It wasn't a big explosion, but it was loud enough to make me jump, and it burned the kid's hair. Luckily, he dropped the firework after that and ran away unharmed. After that, things settled down again and the fireworks continued on without a hitch. My wife came back over to me after the display was over and asked why I had Unan run over and grabbed the kid myself. I told her that I could unbelieve that his parents didn't see that he was in danger. Then I noticed that his mom was frantically waving at us from where she had been sitting. She mouthed the words, "Thank you," over and over again. I think she had been watching the whole thing with dread, knowing that her kid had wandered too far, but she didn't want to admit it. Maybe she was embarrassed that her kid had almost blown himself up. Maybe she was just thankful that someone else had saved him. Either way, I'm glad that I was there that night. I've been told that my quick thinking saved that kid's life, and I like to think that's true. But sometimes when I look at my kids and think about how proud I am that they re-mine, I also wonder if I did the right thing by scaring them so badly that night.